I'm Rebecca Goldbert, Executive Director at the Helen Diller Institute for Jewish Law and Israel Studies at UC Berkeley Law. Thank you for joining us for this special webinar, the second talk in our fall literary series, entitled Dog, a Conversation with author Yishay Ron. Author Yishay Ron will join Helen Diller Institute visiting professor Yael Segalovitz to explore themes of his novel, Dog, including trauma, addiction, the long road toward healing, and the role of writing in the healing journey. Yardenne Greenspan, the book's translator from Hebrew to English, will also join the conversation, delving into questions of translation and the layers of meaning and complexity that translation elicits. It feels important to connect the themes of today's conversation to real-world events, and I know our speakers will address a number of related topics. We have witnessed a ceasefire, the return of living hostages to Israel, and exchange of Palestinian prisoners. The current peace feels fragile, volatile, and hopeful. Even if the current peace can hold, civilians and soldiers, Israelis and Palestinians will be processing trauma and PTSD for many years to come. Hopefully, the conversations around Dog can bring that experience out of the shadows and into the open. A little bit about the Helen Diller Institute. The Helen Diller Institute provides a rich academic forum for students and faculty through its two programs, one in Israel Studies and the other on Jewish law, thought, and identity. The Institute houses an undergraduate fellowship of 40 students, brings visiting faculty from Israeli and U.S. universities to teach and research at Berkeley, hosts the university's undergraduate minor in Israel Studies, and offers dozens of lectures and programs for the public and campus communities. Please refer to our website, social media, and our email blast for upcoming programs and for recordings of past programs. All of our programs, activities, and events are dependent on your philanthropic support, and we thank you for your continued support. As I mentioned, this webinar is part of the Helen Diller Institute Fall Literary Series hosted and curated by Yael Segalovitz. Please see our website for more information on this amazing and relevant series. Now I'm excited to introduce you to all of our speakers. I'm thrilled to welcome Yishay Ron. Yishay Ishi Ron is an acclaimed Israeli author, a former elite combat soldier, and a survivor of severe PTSD. Writing has been an essential part of his healing journey, enabling him to transform deeply personal wounds into stories of trauma, resilience, and redemption. His novel Dog is a searing and powerful work of literary fiction that confronts the invisible scars of war. The Hebrew edition was longlisted for the Sapir Prize, Israel's most prestigious literary award, and just recently, the National Library of Israel recommended Dog as one of the most important contemporary works on post-trauma. Dog was translated into English by the renowned New York-based translator Yardenne Greenspan, also joining us today, and has already drawn international attention. Celebrated filmmaker Eran Riklis was so struck by the novel's emotional force that he committed to adapting it into a feature film. Ron's previous works in Hebrew include Holiday Apocalypse, which was nominated for the Geffen Award, and Vincent's Nose, a children's book that was adapted into an award-winning play. Across genres, his writing continues to explore the fragile boundary between suffering and survival, silence and voice, despair and imagination. I'm also pleased to welcome Dog's translator, Yardenne Greenspan. Yardenne Greenspan is a writer and Hebrew translator born in Tel Aviv. Her work has been featured in Tablet, Jewish Book Council, Literary Hub, Haaretz, Words Without Borders, and as a regular column in Plowshares. Her translations have been published by Restless Books, St. Martin's Press, Akashic, New Vessel Press, Amazon Crossing, and Farrar, Straus and Giroux. Her translation of The Memory Monster by Yishay Ishi was a 2020 New York Times notable book, and her translations have repeatedly been included in World Literature Today's notable translations lists. Greenspan has taught creative writing and translation workshops at Columbia University and a VA hospital. She has an MFA from Columbia University and lives in New York City. Finally, I'm excited to introduce Yael Segalovitz, our host and curator, who will moderate this discussion. Yael Segalovitz is the Helen Diller Institute visiting professor in the Department of Comparative Literature at UC Berkeley and an assistant professor in the Department of Foreign Literatures and Linguistics at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. She earned her PhD in comparative literature from UC Berkeley in 2018, where she was a Townsend Center and Posen Fellow. At the Helen Diller Institute, she has been teaching courses on Hebrew literature and translation, and she has also been curating and facilitating a public literary series featuring leading Israeli writers and scholars, including Ayelet Sabari, Sarai Shavit, Ayelet Gunder Goshen, Maya Arad, and Nana Ariel. Today's program is part of this wonderful series. Her research spans American, Hebrew, and Brazilian modernisms with a focus on transnational literary exchanges and translation. Her recent book, How Close Reading Made Us, The Transnational Legacies of New Criticism, traces the global circulation of close reading beyond the Anglophone world and its influence on modernist literary production in Hebrew and Portuguese. Her current projects explore the resurgence of psychoanalytic object relations theory in the American humanities and the representation of sleep and psychic rest in Hebrew literature. She also co-hosts the podcast Psychoanalyterature, featuring conversations with leading scholars at the intersection of psychoanalysis and literature. Please join me in welcoming Yishay Ron, Yardenne Greenspan, and Yael Segalovitz.
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
It's
everyone.
such a pleasure to be here and kind of commence this conversation. And I'm proud to be in conversation both with Ishi and with Yardenne and kind of bringing translation to the fore as well as the writing process itself. So I want to start by giving kind of a very short synopsis of the book, Dog, without spoiling any important information for the reader, hopefully, and then open it up for conversation. So Dog follows Geller, the main protagonist, who we will later know and find out that his real name is Barak, a former IDF officer who fought in Operation Pillar of Defense in Gaza and was then celebrated as a hero after carrying his fallen comrade from the battlefield. But the book really kind of forces an ethical question about the very idea of a hero soldier when years later a reunion with his old unit triggers an eruption of post-traumatic memories that shatter the fragile narrative of heroism that he's built around himself and that others have built around him. And he finds himself drifting through Tel Aviv streets, homeless and addicted to heroin, where he forms a really beautiful, fragile bond with Dog, a wounded animal that also brings back memories from the battlefield, and Doris, a woman who carries her own trauma and whose quiet compassion becomes really a last chance of grace for Geller or Barak. So I want to actually start with Yardenne, if you're willing, and tell us a little bit about your first encounter with this novel, how it felt emotionally, or what challenges it posed for you, if any.
Well, when I start working on a novel, I pretty quickly get an idea of what the process is going to look like. So with some books, it's going to entail pausing every two sentences to look something up or to figure out how to convey something that just doesn't seem to be translatable. Luckily, Dog was one of those books where it just started to flow right away. The emotion of it was so raw and so human that it was kind of impossible not to feel an affinity to it. And so I kind of just started racing ahead with it. It was a very, I don't want to say seamless because nothing is ever really seamless, but it felt very natural. It flowed really well, and it was a pleasure.
Great. I mean, I will have many questions about the translation process and specific moments that I think are extremely challenging, especially since the book involves Hebrew slang and a lot of military jargon, and on the other kind of pull a lot of poetic play. So we'll get to it. But Yishay, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the writing process for this exceptional novel.
Yeah, so first of all, let me say that I'm honored to be here, and thank you to all the panelists and to the Helen Diller Institute for having me as a guest. It's my honor. Um, Writing Dog was a little different than any other book which I wrote, or usually that author writes, because it was written while I was PTSD, but I didn't know I was a PTSD survivor, meaning my PTSD was manifested in many ways, but I lived a regular life. I wrote books, I raised a family, I had a business, but I suffered from nightmares, from flashbacks, from the 15 first years after the service. I was using drugs and alcohol most of the day, and I didn't admit that I'm a PTSD, because PTSD is for weak people, huh? For weak men. This is how we as men, especially in Israel, we perceive it. We are big soldiers, strong men. Monkeys just came out down from the trees. We cannot be PTSD. So I didn't admit it. And although I suffered a lot, I handled it, at first with drugs, later with psychiatric medication. And then I started writing Dog as a novel, which I felt bond with it because I was in a special unit in the army and I knew about PTSD a lot, but I was not connected, I didn't connect it to myself. So I had all the emotions and I did cut down into my art and feelings and pain and put it on the pages, but it wasn't me, it was Geller, it was the protagonist. And only after a few years later, when I had this really mental breakdown and I got really shattered to million pieces and I couldn't sleep and couldn't eat and I was depressed and with panic attacks that lasted for months, only then I understand that actually Geller is me and that we had the same way of PTSD. So then, because I couldn't do really anything, I rewrite and edited Dog, and it gave me some kind of balance and a way to continue my life with some kind of a hope. I was also suing the defense ministry for recognition, and I suddenly started to understand PTSD more and I had something like a mission to unlight this issue, this theme, because so many people and even people from my unit, which I know, suffer from PTSD, and PTSD becomes a real big issue worldwide. And especially in Israel, it's now because of the war, more than 70 veterans took their own lives since the war began. It's only because they did not get the right treatment, and maybe a lot of them couldn't admit to themselves. When you are suffering from such an injury, you look in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself. You're not the man you used to be a second before it happened. And, I remember even touching my face to see that I'm real. Disassociation is another issue with PTSD. And so I took Dog and I decided that it will be more than just a novel that I will submit to a publishing house and it will be on the shelf for a month or two. I decided it would be some kind of a mission to put a light on PTSD in general and in Army veterans PTSD, specifically. And during the editing and everything, I started to understand that I have something which is a little different than other novels which I already written. And maybe I will not take all the time, so we can continue if you have any leading questions you want to put.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
many questions, but I also love hearing you.
Thank you.
I guess again, I want to talk about dog and the title, and but we will get there. I do want to kind of pull on one thread of what you said, the unbearable price that everyone in war ends up paying, whatever side you find yourself on. But the fact that one needs help and guidance, support, in order to find a way out. And in the novel, you present a few moments of people trying to reach out a hand to Geller to pull him out, right? So we have Dog doing that. We have Doris doing that. But we also have Amir, who is Geller's brother, who tries to reach out. But in that moment, when the brother tries to reach out, it is a complete failure. So I wonder if we can read that moment, and then maybe you can talk to us about the different strategies of reaching out, or what would really make a specific moment of grace or kind of attempt of help. What really defines it as productive or powerful, or, sketching a way out, tentative as it may be. So I'll just share a specific quote with you, and then we can think about it together. And Yardenne, if you'll be willing to read it for us, that would
Absolutely.
be great. So this is a moment in which Amir, Geller's brother, tries to encounter him on the street.
Then he began to cry like a child. He crouched next to me, grabbed my hand hard, but his tears only made my anger boil over. Between bursts of crying, he said he could help me. He said that, if necessary, he would pay my way through rehab, and we'd talk to the military and the defense ministry and hire a lawyer. You took 2 bullets and watched your friends burning alive in an APC. There's no way in the world you aren't suffering from PTSD, he said. But the heroin blocked my emotions, and all his crying made no impression on me. All of a sudden, I started finding the whole situation funny, so I laughed in his face like some mad clown, watching his mouth fall open with disbelief. It must have really pissed him off because he started cursing me out, which is when I lost my temper and told him to get out of my face before I murdered him. I made the threat sound so acute and palpable that I'm sure he almost peed his pants. Who knows? I may have really meant it. Maybe I could have murdered him.
Yardenne, before we move to talk about Amir and this strategy of reaching out, can you say a little bit about the translation here? Because in the Hebrew, which I don't have here, it is kind of full of very specific jargon. Did you find it difficult to shift between the languages?
You mean the military jargon?
The military jargon, and also to get out of my face,
Yeah.
kind of the Israeli
Well,
slang.
things like slang, over time, honestly, like that, it's one of those things that I've lived in the US for 15 years now, and I think I've improved a lot as a translator during those years, because rather than just having English as a language that I was fluent in and as a language that I often spoke to my parents in, I was surrounded by it. Including, like, as a student, I was surrounded by younger people, and I heard a lot of the way they talk to each other. And in the beginning, I was kind of lost. But it made translating dialogue and the way people actually express themselves a lot better for me, because I was immersed in it. And so I find that with slang, the best thing to do, and this is probably true for a lot of different aspects of translation,
Yeah.
the best thing is not to try to emulate it, but just to try to figure out what a person who's a native English speaker would say in that situation. I think "get out of my face" is one of those examples where it's kind of similar, actually, in Hebrew and in English, so it's not very much of a struggle. But I've had many other experiences where, I find myself pulling from TV shows or songs, pop culture in general, in order to make a character sound more slangy. When it comes to the military stuff, it's tricky. By virtue of being a Hebrew translator, I've had the experience of translating a lot of narratives that were connected to the military in one way or another. And so I've learned through that experience that there's obviously some overlap, but there's also so many differences. There's huge differences in the way the American military, for instance, is structured as opposed to the IDF, in the way the ranks are ordered, even the equipment that is used, and so it's difficult. I have a few friends that I consult who are American veterans, and they can often help me, again, not always find a direct literal translation, but find whatever the equivalent would be if this were about the American military. But a lot of times you also have to leave some of that difference in, because this is a book about a soldier who fought in the IDF, not in America. So you kind of have to play around with it, occasionally leave some things out if they just don't translate. But, bottom line, and in books like this, it doesn't matter that much if I call it an APC or if it happens to be a tank. It's about the human experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes through very strongly, which brings me to the question for you, Ishi, on this. I felt myself sympathize very much with Amir here. Like, I'm guessing that's what I would have done. Why do you think he failed? And where Doris and Dog would be able to do otherwise?
A lot of time when veterans feel that people reach out to them and trying to put this role of PTSD on them, they feel a little bit under attack, like under someone who want to put a role into you. That's what happened to me when my wife, for years, she said, listen, Ishi, you eat me up, you eat me during our sleep, you scream out, you wake up in nightmares. What's more obvious than a PTSD? And I couldn't admit it to myself. It's not that I understood what she said, it was logical, but I said like, it's like I usually say that a lot of PTSD survivors from many, all PTSD, sexual attack, veterans, car accident, people losing their children, they don't, it's hard for them, it's shameful for them to admit something like this, so they don't treat themselves. It's just like colon cancer when people are ashamed to get checked because they're ashamed to do this testing, and then they don't find it in time, and it kills them. That's what happens usually, I think. And I know it is like this because, first of all, I know it on myself. It's not only my wife that said that I'm PTSD. It was my sister, my mom, many people, and I just pushed them off and said, no, you don't know what you're talking about. But also, I understand it because so many veterans take their own life. I read that in the U.S. it's around 6,000 a year. It's huge. It's very obvious that they don't admit it and they don't seek help or they don't accept help, and they're more easy to go and use drugs and use alcohol, and that's it. So when Amir is trying to reach out to Geller, Geller is feeling that this feeling of someone is trying to be superior than him. Oh, you are the weak one. Amir comes from New York where he's playing in his band, and he's coming to save Geller, and Geller don't want to be saved by other people. He want to handle his issues like he always did. He was an officer. He was very strong. So I think that this is one thing that we should look at people with PTSD and see who's the people that can reach out to them. And usually it will be more of like their teammate or other veterans which can easily, more easily get to them. Okay, so they can. In Israel, there's a program for PTSD people to go together abroad and have an experience in Romania or in Hungary or somewhere where you can, climb mountains together and sit near around the fire and talk about your experiences. I think when you're doing those things, then a soldier, a veterans can open up. So maybe, it's exactly like other PTSD. Maybe sex sex injuries like PTSD from a sex assault are more easy to be open when they sit together with other people that were injured in this way. So I think, and by the way, when Dog came out, it became like some kind of a card book in Israel for PTSD, and many people bought the book. It became a bestseller, and they came to my house for a signature, and they start spilling their guts, everyone with his own PTSD. It's amazing that, and they were not always PTSD from, fighting or combat. Sometimes it was, I had a reporter that was being in the West Bank, and he was lynched by a mob, and because he accidentally got into a village that he wasn't supposed. I had someone which he was in the very special unit in the army, but when he came to talk with me, he actually opened about his PTSD that was from childhood because he was sex assaulted when he was a child. And it's amazing that Dog and me as an author were a channel for those people to open and talk about their experiences, and some of them, stayed in touch with me, asked for advices, how to handle it, where to go, how to treat it, etc. So it's funny, my wife said at some point, listen, Ishi, it's like a Shiva, the Israeli, the Jewish morning ritual for 7 days, but it lasted for 7 weeks or more. At the end, it was too much for us to carry all those stories on our shoulders, so we had to stop with it because it was too much. But I think, again, that Dog is really became some kind of a lifesaver for some families, for some people.
So can you tell us a little bit about Doris's character? Because she seems to be able to carry that pain, precisely the kind of image that you put on. What makes
Yeah,
her special? How would you describe her? What does she do differently?
I think that Doris is being one of his teammate. Okay, she wasn't his teammate in the army, of course, but because of our PTSD, because she lost a son and a husband, and she is a hardworking lady which lives alone and deals with the shitty life that she has. Really, she cleaned houses, and she lost everything that was precious to her. So she's about the same position as Geller. And if I said before that a teammate is more easily to approach and to make a PTSD veteran talk and to be open, so Doris is like this. She accepts Geller as he is. She's not trying to change him. She tell him, you can come and do drugs in my house, because it's you. She understands him. And I think that this is being on the same level as Geller opens him to her and give him the option to have a real friends that understand him. So I love Doris. She's a good character, nice character. So I think she has a really important role in the plot and in Geller's life.
Yeah, absolutely. And she seems to also go through, a kind of process, and not only Geller, which makes the relationship very special. But I want to linger for a minute with another central character who is Dog himself, and ask you, before we get to why a dog and what's the, role of an animal in this context, maybe a little bit about the intertextual link here. So many big Hebrew literature, significant ones, allow the dog to speak, right? And I'm thinking about Agnon, of course, but also Aleph Bet Yoshua in Late Divorce has a chapter in which the dog speaks, Horatio, and many other, international texts that give dogs a perspective. Did you think about any of this as you were writing? Was it reverberating for you, or did it come from another place?
Because I read a lot, and I read Israeli literature and a lot of international literature, so it's very hard for me to put a finger and tell you this influenced me and this not. And I'm influenced from so many good authors, which I love and sometimes adore, and I'm sure that I encounter a lot of my perspective from things that I read. But specifically about Dog as a character, listen, Dog as a novel is not a war novel. Okay, people may think, when we talk about it, that it's something like All Quiet on the Western Front, or The Things I Carry, or all those iconic novels which deals with the war. But deals with what happened when the war is over. Okay, and Dog is there because the war was over, and Geller, although he saw so many atrocities in his eyes, saw and did. He caused innocent people to die. He caused terrorists to die. He saw his friend die. Um, he couldn't handle those things. So I needed a character that he could put all those bad memories, concentrate all those bad memories on something which is uh, more easy to deal with. Okay, so of course shooting Dog, as Geller remembers that his teammate did during the war, is not easy. Of course, shooting an animal is not easy, but it's much easier than confronting his demons, his devils, of all the atrocities of killing human beings or seeing human beings being killed near him. So I think it was more of a symbolic thing that I started to develop because I wanted Geller to have some kind of an incident which is not so dramatic as killing human beings, but still be dramatic enough to linger in his mind and to move the plot and move his PTSD. Now, there's actually two dogs that are one. One is the Gazan dog, the dog that Geller remembers from Gaza, which was, by the way, no Arab dog, no Muslim dog, no Hamas dog, no Jewish dog. It was just a stray dog that came to have some affection from Geller's team and got shot. And then he revives in his second character when this dog comes to Geller, to the dump that Geller lives in, and this dog comes as a stray dog, and then the dog put a suit of something different. Then this dog can suddenly gives his warm body to Geller. He can give him someone to take care of. And as Geller say in one of the quotes that his mom says, if you have someone to take care of, you don't need to take care of yourself. So dog is so important. He gives the hope and the option for redemption in the story. And also dog, as you said, so many symbolic things. You know, Geller sees him in one point as a god, the god of dog of Egyptian dog when he sees it, when he is using drugs, and sometimes he is the stray dog that Gellers need to save and take care of, and he ignites flashbacks. So dog is a very important protagonist, and at one point when I wrote the book, I understood that dog is maybe the most important protagonist of the book, and I had to give him his space, and so part of half of the book is from dog's perspective, or I gave him the space and the respect he needs.
Yeah,
By the
and we'll
way,
talk about.
just one thing. Dogs are also in real life. They not only we use them as soldiers. We don't ask them, but we use them as soldiers, and they are loyal soldiers. Sometimes they die for us, for the soldier with them when the soldier is going home. He's a reserve. The dog comes with him. When they get shot, the dogs, they bury them and give them a funeral. So, and also for PTSD, there's a big program in Israel and in the world, in the US also, for having dog companions that can smell anxiety and panic attacks and stuff like this. So dog was like in the right place, in the right time for me.
Okay, so let's read a little paragraph, a beautiful paragraph from the book, but a very haunting one that puts dog in conversation with the question about the ethics of war, if there is such a thing. Of course, as you said, it's not a war story, but it's a war narrative, right? So the narrative and the consequences of war carry on with Geller and with the readers as well. So let's read this together. Yardenne, would you mind reading it for us? Thank you. Oh, sorry, it's not the right one. Yeah.
Again, I hear Mom's voice. She's begging me to talk to her, but now my dad is back in Gaza. Now my head is back in Gaza, in the field hospital. I lay on a gurney and found a small bit of bone smeared with Yoram's brains inside my shirt pocket. I didn't know what to do with it, whether I should give it to someone or bury it in the ground or just toss it in the sand. There were lots of soldiers around, as well as Elad, the unit doctor, and I heard them call in a medevac. I knew my guys were about to make the entire neighborhood shake, killing anything in sight, just like the previous day, when we killed a ton of them to redeem our dead. And they were probably all civilians because the terrorists knew better and ran away. They crawled into their burrows like fucking moles, and the only people who remained above were civilians, who had to suffer the bombs that shattered their homes and ripped their organs and blasted their bodies. And poor dog that Yuval shot in the head, a Hamas dog who did nothing wrong, just wanted some food or water or attention. And Yuval put a bullet in his head, then smiled like an idiot, and I wanted so badly to punish him. But I couldn't, because what's one dead dog in all this hell?
Thank you. Ishi, I felt that you're asking here maybe one of the most difficult questions, ethical one. about a war, which is what happens not only to the victims, of course, but also to the one conducting the atrocity as a young person, not yet formed. What were you trying to bring about or communicate to us here?
This specific part that Yardenne read is showing that basically most of the fighting soldiers are kids.
How do we see that here?
Because you see that he is injured himself, and he finds in the pocket part of Yoram's brain, and think of what he thinks of. Like he contemplate what to do with a piece of brain while he got shot and in a bad condition, and people are treating him, and he thinks about what to do with this piece of brain, if he should bury it like, Jews buried every part of blood they find, or just toss it out, or, it's like a dilemma of a little kid that thinks, oh, what I should do with what left in the plate. Should I throw it? Or maybe there are hungry people that need food, so I can't throw it. So it's like a very childish dilemma, horrible dilemma, of course. But the way of thinking, it's a thinking of someone which is unmature, and it shows that, we have pilots, we have driver in tanks, we have soldiers in special unit, we have officers, even high ranked, and they're still kids, Basically, they're kids. They just finished, and we can see it sadly in this war that hopefully just ended, and that kids that just finished high school during the war got killed during this war. They were in high school when the war started, just like happened in Vietnam, in the US. People were kids when the war started and get drafted and were killed in Vietnam, and they are kids. So of course, and I'm also talking about the innocent people, of course, because there's no war without innocent people getting killed and injured, and it's sad, it is really, really sad that so many people are affected by wars and political moves that people that control us decide. They decide to go on 7th of October, and it rolled out such um, a big snowball that took everything with it. And then there was a war in Lebanon, there was a war in Syria, and there was in Yemen, and everything. And so many innocent people got killed because of those people that decided to go to war. So this is something which influences us as a society and influence the world. And it's also influenced us as a people. There will be hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza PTSD from this war, and there will be hundreds of thousands of Israelis also being influenced and PTSD from this war. So I think it was important for me to touch it.
Yeah, I think important and extremely significant and urgent. I want to kind of bring us back to the text and the way that it evokes another war that is actually very ancient from the Hebrew Bible between David and Saul, in the exquisite quote that you open the text with, I want to share it with you for a minute. Can you guys see it? Yarden, can you read it for us?
Who are you pursuing? A dead dog?
And I was thinking here about, this quote is from Samuel 1:24. And Yarden, which translation of the Bible did you approach for this? There's so many.
I can't remember which one I used for this, but my two favorites that I usually use are either King James or the New International Version. And I make the choice usually depending on how ancient I want it to sound. If I want it to be to seamlessly fit into a modern text, because Hebrew language, including contemporary Hebrew, uses a lot of biblical references. So if I want it to kind of fit in seamlessly, I'll usually use the New International Version. If whatever the context of the book is requires it to sound more biblical, then I usually use King James. This looks like it's New International Version, so I'm guessing that's what I used.
Okay, yes, definitely. And Ishi, what did you think about when you put this epigraph in?
I wanted to give in this place. The book was finished, and I understood the dog as a big role, and that the book will be called Dog, and it was just a matter of finding something which would be very significant of giving dog the stage he needs. And I think I'm not a religious person, but I am. Um, I have respect for the Jewish tradition, um, and instead of finding quotes about dogs from other authors and or other novels or books, this popped up to my head while I was scooping around, and I just found it sometimes it's just like you look for a sentence in the book and you try and you throw out 10,000 sentences, and until you have the one that you know that it's the correct one. So when I saw this, I didn't even dig into it in the context of if it fits my book or not. Who are you pursuing a dead dog is such a perfect sentence for dog, for the novel, and for dog that was dead in Gaza, that I was like, it was as if it was a premonition. It's like I knew that I need to use it. So
Yeah.
it was just it was fitted as if you see a book cover and you know that this is the cover. So I knew it was the sentence I want to use. It felt more than it heard.
Yeah, and I think
It
that's
felt
the potency, of good, strong literature. Because I do think this, this is taken from a scene between David and Saul when they're in civil war. So Saul is trying to kill David, and David finds a moment in which he can kill Saul and actually decides, for moral reasons, is unable to do that at the moment. And he screams to Saul, "Why are you pursuing me? Like, I'm just a dead dog. I'm nothing." So I thought that was, incredible, that it is a moment in which a person denigrates himself to thinking about himself as a dead dog, which I think is very much Geller both remembers someone killing a dog, but also thinks of himself as a homeless dog himself. So I thought that was really beautiful.
he put all the atrocities into this dead dog.
Yes, absolutely. So it brings me to the question about dog's perspective, because while Geller speaks in the first person in the story, dog speaks to us in the third person. So we are told about what he thinks from the outside rather than through the personal eye. And I was wondering if that was a stylistic choice that you thought of or just sounded right for dog.
I started with Geller from first voice, which was was my voice, okay? And if I speak, I have to speak directly. And then when I decided about Dog, and Dog was created as a character and started to have his own life, I felt that I want to give him a voice, and I wanted to give him a human characters and emotions and thoughts even. But in order that it will be more reasonable with the reader, I think I put it on telling what Dog thinks and not giving him a straightforward voice, okay? Because and also it was important for me to distinguish between the voices of Geller and Dog. So when the reader reads in first voice, he understands immediately that it's Geller, and it gives some kind of rhythm to the story. Sometimes, as a reader, I read, books that are written from two perspectives or three perspectives or whatever, and then I sometimes looking forward for the next chapter of the character I am connected more to. And I think it's the same, maybe someone that is more connected to the story about Dog would wait for and be impatient to read this part, because it's easily distinguished between them. So it was like also emotional, but also intellectual and thinking operative about how to write and how would the reader read the book.
Yeah, maybe we can read together just a short section of Dog to get his voice. Yardenne, you'll read it for us?
Yes. Then the father helped him into the car, and they drove for a while before arriving at an unfamiliar place, without dirt, where all the smells were foreign. They got out of the car, and the father rubbed his head and got back into the car by himself, leaving Dog all alone. He watched the car moving away, then sat down and waited to be picked up and returned home. Even when everyone left, Dog knew they always came back. So he waited a long time, then walked around for a bit and sat back down. But nobody showed up. His family didn't come back for him, and he remained on his own, scared and sad.
Heart-wrenching, really. Yardenne, I was wondering if, as you were translating, if you noticed or tried intentionally to create some kind of different voice for Dog and Geller.
I always do when I'm translating different perspectives, although, usually with good writing, I don't have to try very hard because it's already there in the original. And I think this is a good example of it, not only because of the use of third person, but the sort of down to basics that is involved in undertaking the perspective of a dog. Or I think with writing children, it's often similar. It's like it's like the most foundational subconscious issues that we all end up talking about in therapy. Like every big complicated problem we have kind of usually boils down to that. I feel like with dogs, that's the main thing. It's all about instinct and need and desire.
And
so
smell and touch, right? We really feel it
Exactly.
in that moment.
But of
Yeah.
course, the trick here was to make the voices sound different while also have them echo each other. because this is very much Geller's experience of feeling that the world has moved on and he's just sitting there and no one's coming to pick him up.
That's beautiful. And Ishi, I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about why give dog such a history, but maybe Yardenne just answered it. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yardenne said it amazingly, as she translated the book amazingly.
She
It's
really did.
yeah, I feel that the work Yardenne did is remarkable. You know, when I read what she did, I suddenly could read the book as a reader and not as an author, and it was like for me it was like wow. It's like I'm waiting to see what Eran Riklis will do with the movie, because it takes and when you take a book and translate it, I now understand. Although I read translation from all over the world for years, I never could really understood how amazing the translator should be in order to combine the two voices, the voice of the author and his voice, which is kind of an author in the same way. She picks up the words she wants. She decides about the terms, and suddenly I was feeling that me and Yarden are connected in our art. It's amazing. I don't know how much Yarden feels it, although I feel that we care for each other. But for me, it's something that really remarkable. You know, that by doing what she did, it's as if we are connected by our art. And yeah, she said it correctly. Dog had to be a PTSD in order to connect with Geller. As I said before, you know, if I brought I don't know, a cocky dog that looks like, you know, he just came from Beverly Hills, it would not would be reliable, and also there will be no connection with Geller. You know, I had to have, like I wanted Doris to be PTSD and to be in this low place so she can connect with Geller. The same with the dog. Dog had to be PTSD. It was obvious for me the minute I started writing him, and that's why I gave him this biography of someone which is really post-traumatic.
I have many questions here from attendees, so I'll move to them, even though I have many other questions myself. So I'll start us going. One of the attendees is asking about the name of the book in Hebrew. Is it simply Kelev?
Simply Kelev.
And did you have any other thoughts about how to translate that?
No, I really don't think it was necessary to make any changes. It's the whole, like the bottom line of it.
Which is interesting, right? Because in Hebrew, Kelev can function as both a general pronoun or and a specific one. And in Hebrew, it's even in English, it's even a more strong kind of combination. It's his personal name, but also a general category.
Same in Hebrew. It's exactly the same. It was operating and effective the same way in Hebrew and in English. A dog as a dog in general, and as a dog which Geller calls him dog.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Another question. How does Yishay capture the effects of PTSD in heroine through Geller's interior dialogues and interior moments in the book? So how did you try to kind of put into writing this delusional state?
You mean how physically, like how
Yes, stylistically, it's very hard, right? To kind of to portray as someone that is in a moment of dissociation or just, you know, not in focus.
First of all, when you know, dog was having some kind of rear connection, like he was. It was a process, okay? Writing dog was a long process which took many turns and changes, and as much as I felt when I already understood I'm PTSD, things changed in dog, because then I could understand much more what Geller feels and what is happening, and I understood it because not only because I felt it, but because I was there. Okay, so when I was one time in this association, and I was in the middle of the street, and suddenly I didn't know where's my home. It's the scariest feeling you can feel. You know, I just stood in a place, leaned on a wall, and you know, I didn't know if I'm more amazed or more scared in this situation. So writing about it later, it was like, it's saying very easy. It's not easy because it's painful, but it was very easy in the terms of how to do it and how to understand it. And also people ask me a lot about the addiction. So, of course, being addicted to uh, marijuana and easy drugs and to alcohol is not exactly like being addicted to heroin, but I can tell you that I talked with a lot of heroin users. Uh, I think that I'm feeling very lucky that we are in a time that we can reach very easily almost anyone. And it's something that authors in previous era couldn't. They have either to go to the library and dig a lot, or to imagine everything, which not always you can do easily. And today, going to forums and to find the drug addict and to find technique and people that teaches you, it's amazing. But there are subreddits that teaches you how to inject heroin. They say, listen, don't do it, but if you are doing it, at least do it correctly, and then you can speak with people that are addicted. So I did a lot of research, talking with people, and I also talked with PTSD, other PTSD, and read a lot about it. So I think it was very natural for me to write it in this way.
Mhm. Another participant is asking, why does Doris trust Geller? So is it believable that she is willing to uh, trust him, to bring him into her house? And we should say to people who haven't read the book yet, she really treats him with a lot of dignity, and gives a lot of trust in him, even though he comes in that moment from a very low place.
I
Maybe tell
think
us a
that,
little bit about it.
yes, when I wrote about Doris, I had a few women character, which some of them I knew personally in my life, and I knew about one woman that trusted almost anyone she was feeling sorry for, and helped a lot of people and get them into her house. Um, Also, my parents, as when I was a child, my mom was working in a boarding school for people that for children from wrecking houses, and a lot of the time she brought them home to for us, and and I think that maybe it was like a calculation of risk, but she was very trustable. She trusted the people. The kids. that she brought to be with us for a few days or few months or few years. And I think that it brings me maybe to terms in Judaism that we all know. It's called Tikkun Olam. And Tikkun Olam is repairing the world, and it says that it means that if each and every one of us do a little things in our daily life, smile to someone, buy a warm meal to a homeless, do really small things, if all of us do it, then there will be a big move of repairing the world. And I think Doris, in this way, she's practicing it very well. And she sees Geller for what he is, a human being, first of all. Okay, not a drug addict. Of course, he's a drug addict, but she sees him as a human being. She even sees him as a beautiful human being, as a handsome man. And she's surprised when he tells her he was an officer in Golani. And I think that it's something that I hope that my readers, when they finish the book and they walk in the street or drive in their big cities and see those homeless people, they will have a different perspective on them, because we are very easily closing up the windows in our cars or saying, okay, he's dirty, I don't want him near me, or she's I don't know, she has mental illness, it's crazy, but basically we should understand that those weak people, they carry big trauma. Okay, no one decides to be a beggar or to be a drug addict or to be a prostitute. They are all weak people. They are the weakest links in society, and they are also transparent. Okay, we don't see them as human beings. We see them as drug addicts or prostitutes or beggars or dirty or whatever terms we use. And instead of, a lot of the time, instead of helping them and calling social services, we decide to call the police. So I think Doris was living in this term of Tikkun Olam. She sees Geller and as a human being, and she wants to help him, really. And she wants to help his dog also.
Yeah, I would add to this beautiful answer that the Jewish philosopher Walter Benjamin said that translation is another form of Tikkun Olam, right? So Yardenne is also doing that small gesture.
Big gesture.
Yeah. Okay, I have a few more questions here, so I'll throw them at you and then you guys decide which one you want to tackle in the 5 minutes that we have left. One is about the characters of Tzvi and the Georgian. How do they function in the story? And then how does the novel more generally say something about memory and its reliability, especially because we know in the end, memory and its reliability become extremely unstable without revealing the whole story to the readers. So which one do you feel like?
Yardenne, you go for the first question
Okay.
about Cratchit's V.
Tzvi and the Georgian. Tzvi and the Georgian are two heroin addicts who live in the dump with Geller. I would say, I feel that they sort of represent the different forces that operate in a person's soul. So the Georgian, that's easy. It's violence. It's just the impulse toward violence as a way to exert control, to be powerful in the world, to even when you're a drug addict living in an abandoned building, it's just a way to get through life. Bless you. With Tzvi, it's a little more difficult. Tzvi was a respectable member of society, a university professor, if I'm not mistaken, or a teacher,
a school teacher, right?
Teacher.
a school teacher. And it sort of feels very clear that he just doesn't belong there. which I think does two things. First of all, it's yet another mirror for Geller's character, someone he can look at and sort of see what happened to him as well, how he was this promising young man, an upstanding citizen who has now become almost invisible, like part of the margins of society. But I think it also to pick up on what Ishi was saying about how we feel when we see people begging for money on the street. Tzvi is a great illustration of the fact that these people are all the same. I mean, like, people have different life stories, but just because someone finds themselves in a situation where they're addicted, they've lost everything, doesn't make them any less intelligent or polite or civilized or kind. And so I think it's also a bit of a teachable moment for readers.
Yeah, and I should say that also both in the Hebrew and beautifully in the translation, you can feel really Tzvi's rich language, right? So even though he has lost everything, he did not lose his language, his form of
I
articulation.
think that his language is part of his ego, which is trying to show that I'm still a human being. Look, I'm speaking highly and uses high language, although I'm in such a low place.
But it also really highlights everything he's lost because his language is so
Exactly.
out of place in the dump. And in fact, it just makes him more of
Comic.
a target.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ishi, you have 3
Yes,
minutes for the question about memory.
Yeah, memory plays a big role for PTSD because um, we cannot control what we remember, and sometimes things we remember are different than what actually happened, and it was very important for me to establish this point at the end of the book, which we will not tell the readers, but there is a turning point which we understand is different than reality. And I think that I went to it through my experience of when I was in a special unit in the army. One of the cases which triggered my PTSD was shooting a friend in my team by accident in an operation. And the memory is so elusive. And when I talked about it with him during a reunion we had, he remembered it so differently than I did. And we don't have much time to speak about it, but it was so incredible for me. You know, I was going with him to the ambulance. He didn't remember it. He said, no. I said, yeah, I was with you in the ER. I was with you when I found the second hole of the bullet, not the doctor. He said, no. I said, yes. So our memory is so different because our perspective was different. And I think memory is you know, so many authors and artists dealt with it in so many creations about the different perspective of different people in the same situation. And sometimes it happens and they see it differently, and sometimes they just remember it differently.
Thank you so much, guys. Really, this was exceptional.
Thank you.
It was our pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
you
I,
are exceptional.
I
Yeah.
want to join Yael in thanking Yishay and Yardenne for an amazing conversation. And thank you, Yael, for hosting. And I encourage everyone to read the book, which is quite a page turner. And thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you,
You.
Rebecca. It's amazing. And if I can ask just our listeners to follow me and Yarden on our social, and of course by Dog, and follow us for our next novel, which Yardenne already translated and will come out in New York next year.
Amazing.
Good
So,
luck.
thank
Thank
you.
you all. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.